Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Moreno versus Albazi fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Moreno is 21-8-2 with 5 KOs and 11 submissions, and Albazi is 17-1 with 5 KOs and 9 submissions. This fight is a 5-round fight in the flyweight division. Moreno's last fight was a loss via split decision versus Royval, and Albazi's last fight was a win via split decision versus Carlos France, that being June of last year. Moreno's UFC losses have come versus Royval in 2024, Pantoja in 2023 and in 2018. Figueiredo in 2022 and Pettis in 2017. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, 5-round flyweight bout, a bout in which I'm here for. I'm entertained by this whole card in general, which I'm going to speak more about in just a moment. But to be honest, I'm intrigued by perhaps the boogeyman of the division as to what Albazi might be seen as. He's somebody who is unbeaten in the UFC. He's somebody who has been building himself up the ranking gradually and is this kind of entity in which hasn't really been tested too much yet. You know, is coming off not the best of performances against Cara France, where, to be honest, was he lucky to get the decision go his way? You probably would have to say so, because he was having a lot of control time. I think he had like 6 minutes of control time, but the actual strikes and the strikes landed, the biggest strikes landed consistently, about almost double was from Cara France. So, you know, Cara France has been a guy who's been around in the flyweight division for quite a while now, and he's had quite a lot of good fights against top guys. And you know, sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses, and I think he has sometimes been given a bit of the short straw, and I think against Albazi he kind of was. But you know, Moreno's not coming off the best of performances either. Of course, like I say, coming off that loss versus Royval uh, in their rematch, in which was a fight in which perhaps Moreno did struggle a bit, and you know, it was a close one. He's coming off back-to-back split decision defeats, and they've not been anywhere near kind of like career-ending defeats. It's not a defeat where you look at them and go, maybe you should retire. It's a defeat where it's been close and you've just perhaps not been able to give quite as much. And I would say that has kind of lost his momentum. But to be honest, Moreno has been somebody who, like I say, has had losses on his record, but has always been able to come back and always been able to bounce back. And even when it was earlier on in his UFC career and he was kind of going through the Ultimate Fighter, he wasn't always winning, and he was not struggling, but perhaps at times had to rebuild and come back and, you know, find his style. And even, like I say, in the losses versus out of like a Figueiredo loss, he still was able to come back and win. And of course, you know, now he's at that kind of end of that era with him and Figgy, and it was a great time, really. I mean, when you look at it, he had some great fights and they were very entertaining. Perhaps it was an interesting time in the flyweight division where there really wasn't too many names, too many options going about. It seems like quite a few people were out or injured, or you know, anybody available was out or injured, like Pantoja at the time. And then other than that, there wasn't really many other options. So, like I say, it was an interesting era of the flyweight division. I mean, currently now it's again another interesting era. I mean, Pantoja, of course, is giving Asakura a title fight in his first UFC fight, which is pretty much unheard of, and is interesting to see that they're now kind of moving on to this, where they're just kind of giving people, trying to bring in new names and trying to just stir things up in the flyweight division, in a division in which perhaps has always been a little bit lackluster, perhaps hasn't always brought the entertainment, and you know, has been talked about getting removed once or twice. But like I say, I think the likes of like a Moreno and an Albazi, you know, an Albazi's a new name coming in. It would make the division more interesting if he is to get past Moreno. But Moreno, I think, is going to be fueled up for this fight. I think he's going to be here for this fight, and I think, obviously, like I say, coming off back-to-back defeats against the top guys, he's going to be here to try and to stake a claim for why he is still there, why he still is deserving, and why this new guy can't just come in and can't just kind of take over and can't just shut him out, and I'm sure that's going to fire him up. And like I say, Albazi's been out for a while. Like I say, he's probably lost his momentum. I think he's lost perhaps his rhythm a little bit. It's been interesting to see that he was out for so long and that the things have worked out the way that they have for him. But he's definitely going to be coming into this one, like I say, himself after quite a poor performance in which a lot of people said that he didn't deserve to win. I'm sure he's going to also be fired up coming into this one. And so, like I say, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And Albazi, as a fighter, I mean, his career to be even, his life to be even where he is now is such a big achievement. So again, it's another one of them things where if things get tough, I'm sure he is able to dig deep because of his kind of his childhood and the fact that he is the kind of main Iraq UFC fighter, if the only one around at the moment, and he's had to kind of make life tough the hard way and had to really work for his position in which he's had to be in. And now he's here, and I'm sure he's definitely not going to want to take a backward step, and he's definitely not going to want to reset and have to go back again to try and get to this position again. I'm sure he's also, like I say, going to be fired up. So I think it's two definitely fired up fighters coming into this one, and also on this card, like I say, it's a good card for a fight night for UFC. It's a good card. Some of the cards in which, as of recent, haven't always been amazing or top tier, but I think this one's pretty good. And I mean, also on this card is Blanchfield versus Namajunas. I think it's a good matchup. It's an interesting matchup. I mean, Blanchfield coming off the loss versus Fioro, where she was kind of getting just continuously pieced up with counters and was making pretty much the same mistake over and over again, where Fioro was the bigger fighter who was able to have a lot more success just by, in general, just being the bigger fighter and not really doing too much else. And then Namajunas coming off a very good win versus Tracy Cortez, where she was able to stifle her momentum, keep her pace, have good striking exchanges, able to hurt Cortez at multiple occasions, and also able to slow down her quite a lot. I think that Namajunas is going to win via unanimous decision. I like Namajunas. The run in which she was once on was amazing and very entertaining, and I would love for her to kind of get back to that point. Perhaps she's a bit of a different fighter now. I think there was a bit of an era where she didn't look amazing in her fights, and a couple fights ago it was not looking. It wasn't looking brilliant, but I think she was developing a new style, changing things up a bit, and I think now she is really coming into her own in the flyweight division, and I think this would be a very good win for her and would perhaps strike a bit of a claim for her to be in with a title shot in the not too distant future. So, she's getting back amongst it again, and I think she's definitely going to be able to slow down Blanchfield and have success enough to be able to get a unanimous decision win. And also on this card, like I say, to speak about how it is a good card and an entertaining one, Derek Lewis, of course, being on it as well. He's always going to bring the entertainment, even though he was meant to be against Romanov, I believe, and then that didn't end up happening. That probably would have been a better fight than which he has now, but nonetheless, he's also going to bring entertainment. So, like I say, a good UFC fight night card. And then going back to the main event, Moreno as a fighter, he's aggressive and I think sneaky with his shots, the shots in which he can get through with the kind of straight shots in which he lunges in and can get through with. They're sneaky and they come at weird times and come in weird points in exchanges. He's got good takedown timing. I think both of them have good takedown timing, but I think Moreno perhaps utilizes it more. He has got good striking in clinches, and also when you're leaving clinches, he's able to strike well in that aspect. He has high tempo, and it's definitely going to be interesting how that plays out because Albazi isn't really that high tempo of a type fighter. He controls the center, Moreno, and I'm sure Albazi's also really going to want to do that. He puts his all into his shots. I'm going to speak about how that can also be a negative in a moment, but he does definitely put his all into his shots. He stands his ground well and won't kind of give too much respect to his opponent. So Albazi, who is strong, who has got underrated power in the division, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Moreno is going to take shots from him and still stand his ground. He's got a good work rate, Moreno. I mean, in that last fight versus Royval, it was at that high altitude, and Moreno did start to slow down and did start to tire, but he still was fighting at a very high pace and was willing to give his all, and that's what you always will see from him. And typically, he does have a very good work rate. He's well rounded. I think in general, he is not a complete fighter, but a well-rounded fighter. He can fight in close or at mid-range, and he's got good body locks as well, which I think he was able to utilise relatively well against Royval, who, of course, the bigger guy, tying him up like that was where he had some of his success. Negatives about him, I think, against the high output, I think he can struggle with. They're not really matching his rhythm, and you can just kind of, he's going to want to respond if he gets caught, but if he's getting caught with multiple ones, he's then going to try and respond, and you can kind of see that come in. And Royval had a lot of success with his high output combinations in which he was throwing. Like I say, he does lunge in and he does duck his head down as well, so a lot of the time it's quite wild swings, it's quite forceful in the way that he's trying to get in, and he definitely does square up in his work as well, so it's not all really that neat and tidy. He ducks his head down, like I say, his accuracy can be off at times, his striking timing isn't amazing. He can't always pin you down and keep you down to the ground, so if he does get Albazi down, will he be able to keep him down? His ground and pound isn't sensational either. Getting past the kind of the guard in that aspect isn't great, and I don't think Albazi's is amazing either, but perhaps it's a little bit better. His strength, I don't think he's as strong as Albazi. I think Albazi is strong. He can headhunt a bit at times, I believe, and like I say, I think he does rush in. And to speak about Albazi as a fighter, I think he's a much more controlled fighter and more accurate fighter with efficient, effective work. His work isn't perhaps always high output, like I say, high tempo and anything like that, but I think it is efficient in his work, and Moreno is perhaps a bit of an opposite type fighter in that aspect. His he feints relatively well, he's got strong kicks, and perhaps could slow Moreno down through them kicks. He's got quite relaxed footwork a lot of the time, perhaps he is going back in straight lines quite a lot, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because Moreno rushing in and Albazi backing up in straight lines with the sneaky shots in which, like I say, Moreno does end up landing, he might be able to have success from there. Moreno, his control time is excellent, and not letting you get to the cage when he is on top of you to be able to help yourself get back up is impressive to how he can keep you there. He definitely doesn't give up. If something doesn't work, he is willing to go back to it again, and if he isn't able to get the takedown the first time, he definitely will reset and then get back to it again. He's very well disciplined. I think he has a great corner, the Basharat twins. So yeah, like I say, got a great corner, and I think he definitely does listen to his corner a lot and takes a lot in from there, which is nice to see. I think he finds his moment, finds his time to strike, and when fights are at his pace, he definitely does find his moment to have success. He has a solid jab. Like I say, I think he has unexpected power. He changes tempo relatively well. He's, like I say, got good timing and is, like I mentioned, efficient in his work. Negatives about him, I think, of course, the activity and the lack of activity is definitely going to play a factor with this being a step up in opponent. The fact that he's not really been that active at all, I think, could play a factor. He does stand quite tall. I think he's slower, and he's a slower starter than that of Moreno. So Moreno definitely could catch him out and have success early on in the fight. I think his head's on the line quite a lot. So, like I say, Moreno with his sneaky shots can definitely catch shots going through the guard of his. He can sometimes only really throw in single shots, and like I said, they're strong, they're powerful. But if he doesn't really hurt Moreno with them, Moreno will respond back with multiple different shots. Like I say, he's got a low output. He can be outthrown from that. He, like I said, does go back in straight lines. Going for combinations, he doesn't really kind of go for combinations too much, and I think he has limited striking output and variation, making the most of his control. I don't think his ground and pound is amazing. I don't think he utilises it that well. I think he waits until his corner tells him to do so before he actually does. So yeah, I don't think he makes the most of his control, and in general, I don't think he's excellent at passing guard either. Albazi is the favourite for this fight from what I believe. It might be close, but I think that Moreno is going to win via TKO in round 4. I think if Moreno is able to keep the work rate and the high output, and is able to perhaps deal with the power of Albazi, Moreno might start slowly and see kind of work out Albazi and work out what he wants to do. But if he is able to work it out and perhaps has a round where he is on the ground and isn't really enjoying that, I think he'll go into round 4 and be like, he really needs to be fired up and really go for it, and that's where I think he can have success. Like I say, with sneaky shots, getting Albazi on the back foot, being aware of the takedowns in which he will offer, but like I say, then throwing continuously and just kind of switching things up, being hard to deal with, hard to pin down, and being tricky. I think that's where Moreno is going to have success and going to be able to, like I say, get a win in that aspect. And if he takes him down, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Albazi does if Moreno gets him down. But yeah, like I say, I think he's going to win via stoppage in the later part of the fight. And then who we could go on to fight next? Like I mentioned, the flyweight division is in a very interesting kind of point. It's always seemingly an interesting point, but Pantoja, like I say, versus Asakura is happening. That's a great fight. I think Royval probably will end up fighting the winner, but that does kind of slow things up a little bit. You know, if Asakura wins, then Royval probably will fight Asakura, but he might fight Pantoja. So if Pantoja loses, then Moreno might fight Pantoja, or Royval might fight Pantoja. But I think one of them will probably end up with the winner, and one of them will probably end up with the loser. If not, something like a Cara France again. Cara France probably is deserving of a title shot just from his kind of longevity and his commitment to sticking around and improving and continuously going for fights and continuously putting on entertaining fights, even if, like I mentioned, they don't always go his way. So he's coming off a win versus Steve Erceg, which is a good win for him, and I think it's growing in confidence again. I think that rematch could make sense, and that rematch could happen. If not, Tyra, that could still be a fight. Tyra definitely shouldn't be written off. I think he's still a good name in the division. I think he's still an interesting entity, and I still think he can come again when he is so young. Perhaps it might be a bit risky putting him in straight with Moreno after, of course, the Royval defeat, but you never know. That could happen, and you know Tyra still made a good account of himself in that fight versus Royval, so like I mentioned, that could happen as well. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like it if you did, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.